Before starting this game, I recently watched all of the seasons of the TV show that was back in December of 2024 because I felt like I wasn't going to get anything out of this game without knowing anything about the franchise. And I'm glad I watched the show because it's probably the best sci-fi IP out there. It's got a great story, the characters are memorable and relatable. I hope they can make more seasons. With this game, Telltale and Deck 9 teamed up to create this 5-episode game that follows Camina Drummer on the scavenger ship Artemis, set before the events of the show. Now, they did release a bonus DLC episode with Christian Avasarala's character from the show also. That one's more political and it's only an hour long. I don't cover it here, but it's okay, I guess. Choosing Drummer to be the main character of this game, it was an obvious choice. She's a fan favorite character of the TV show and the books, but I do feel like it leads to the downfall of the game. As we get deeper into the video, there will probably be some spoilers. It's kind of hard to talk around it with these games being so story heavy, and this one actually being on the shorter end of the Telltale games. As soon as you start up the game and you hear the Expanse theme, it feels like home. Now, the game starts off pretty strong. It has the vibes of the shows. Kara G reprising her role as Drummer is great to hear. She does a great job. And it's just like the show. All of the character actions feel like something you'd see in the show. And when you see all the decapitated heads in the ship we go to scavenge, I was very intrigued with the mystery that unfolds from there. Exploring these destroyed ships is what you'll be doing for the first 2 episodes. I didn't mind the zero-G movement, though it felt okay for the controls for the most part. The only issue is going up and down vertically. That was kind of a mess. And I can see some people getting confused with how the movement is. You can easily get lost and go around in circles. Exploring these areas will reward you with some dialogue, items to scavenge, which only some of them affect the outcome of some events that unfold during the story. There are also some text logs that you can find to add some more flavor text and background info. With all these types of story-driven games, QTEs are here, and just to make sure you're paying attention and to add more interactivity to the game. To me, these QTEs are very outdated and they need to go away completely. Now, I know it's hard because you don't want everybody just walking around looking at stuff and talking to people. These Telltale games are never really about the gameplay, it's all about the story and the character relationships. I'll admit it's a bit hyperbolic to say nothing happens in the game, but that's how I feel coming from my 2 playthroughs. Now, I know it's got to be very difficult to make a prequel canon story only 3 years before the events of the show, and the ending for this game can only go one way. It's just a very boring game. It's hard to feel for the crew of the Artemis with such short time we have with them, and we already have so much time and affinity with Drummer. We're jumping into a point in time where she already has some camaraderie with the rest of the crew, but we don't. So the relationship scale is kind of all over the place. It's lopsided for us, the player. This game felt like it was a filler episode of a TV show. Something that we don't really need to see. Especially when the main mystery that is being set up in the earlier episodes, it just kind of sputters out at the end. It does get its conclusion, but it feels like it was just thrown to the wayside and just there as a device to get Drummer where she is at the end of the game. This game is way too short, with only taking about 5 to 6 hours. The most impactful section is with Drummer facing her past, with Anderson Dawes. But I think you could have done this arc in a different setting. You don't have to set it up like this. Nothing bad can happen to Drummer, so some of the tense moments kind of fall flat. And I was hoping they wouldn't add more characters from the show in the game that they already did, but they did it, and the character they chose really soured me on the game. It felt so forced, and it made up to add more fan service or just to artificially connect it more to the beginning of the show. Now, there's not a lot of decent choices to make, and here you feel like you're watching a cutscene and maybe a choice will come, but it never does. Some of them felt like we should have had player choice, but we weren't given that option. And since we're playing as Drummer, the choices only really make sense that serve the belt. I will give the game some points here because there are some interesting things that are revealed, but I wish the game focused more on those. It's just like in certain seasons of the TV show, like the main mystery of the show kind of like takes a back seat to flesh out more of the character development and character arcs. Now, those are the weakest seasons for me, but I still like them. But if this game had more of the character interactions and getting to start these relationships earlier on, I think it would have been a bit better. Telltale's The Expanse is a very disappointing game. In the end, it does what it sets out to do. There's nothing wrong with having a game that's focused on character growth or some backstory, but that needs to be more of the focus of the game instead of having like this main mystery be the launching point, and then in the middle of it is character growth, and then at the end it just kind of like we can all clap our hands and say we did it, everything's fine, let's go off and do whatever. After letting the game settle in my mind, I did have a decent time with it the first go around, but it isn't what I thought it was going to be. I would only play this game if you have a love for The Expanse, so you can be in the universe again. It's easily on the lower end of the Telltale catalog, but it's way better than their Game of Thrones game.